Hi everyone, and welcome to episode 19 of Ionan's Edge. Today I'll be reviewing the recently released Kizer Original in Gunmetal. Let's jump in with some basic specs. 154 cm blade steel, drop point, high grind, has 2.75 inches of usable fine cutting edge. It is 3 3/8 to the pivot, with an overall length of 6 7/8 from tip to tail. The frame width also, by the way, is 0.47, so just a skosh under half an inch width here. And the overall weight of this knife is 2.6 inches on the dot. So what I like about this knife, the first thing that you notice is how smooth and effortless this knife is when you take it out of the box. First flick, bam, no effort whatsoever, opens perfect, has a nice solid engagement, sounds great. Closes perfectly, effortlessly every single time. The next thing is the look. I mean, the nude satin blade with the gunmetal, and then adding the all black hardware, the clips and pivot and thumb studs, just puts that third color in there and it completes the trifecta. I mean, this is a really good looking knife. It looks nice on camera, but it looks even better in person. It is riding on full ceramic bearings, and that in combination with the button lock makes this knife just literally drop shutty. And that's also another reason why it's so easy to deploy this knife. One note though, I did have to add a drop of oil to the button lock. It has a very positive feel to it, but when I first got it, the button lock felt a little sticky. I think probably the manufacturing tolerances are pretty tight on it. I put a little oil in the bottom here where the spring is captured on this side, and then a little oil here, and now the knife is really good. It doesn't take any effort whatsoever to get that button to go down. It's positive, but it's not hard to press anymore. And finally, like with this blade stock that it has, I mean, it's kind of a little thickish here in the spine, but it comes down so nice and so fine at the bottom. With this flat high grind and the 154 cm steel, the knife it cuts really, really great. It came out of the box sharp, really slicey, good for cutting. Again, high flat grind, so this knife is going to cut really, really well for you. I love the fact that they countersunk the pocket clip screws. Again, this kind of up and then angled down design is something that I really favor, and countersunk screws, and again, all the countersinks on all these screws are really good. You cannot feel these screws. The knife is completely flat from the side. There's no feeling the screws sticking out. So well done for Kizer on that. The knife has good ergos. If you're holding it like this, you can get 4 fingers on it, and your thumb kind of naturally falls right there between the blade and the scales. And also, you can choke up on this knife to the flat right here where they put this little cutaway sharpening choil, finger choil. And if you got bigger hands, that obviously leaves some extra room in the back of this knife, and it puts your finger a little bit more forward in that position. Guys, I gotta say, this knife is super fidgety. Every time I have this knife in my hand, I'm always just flicking it open and then just dropping it closed, flicking it open. It's just, you can do it either way. You can button lock it, close it up. It's so silky smooth. It's amazing. I mean, it feels like the pivot screw is like completely loosened up on this knife. It's not, it's really great. There's no blade play or anything in this knife. Super good engagement on it. So are there any dislikes or issues for me with the Kizer Original? So overall, I don't have any complaints or issues with this knife. It's a very solid design. However, there are a couple of things to note. First, there is no jimping on this knife anywhere. There's no jimping on the bottom, and there's no jimping anywhere on the top or the sides of this knife. That's not a big issue for me because honestly, this gray metal coating that they put on there, it has just the tiniest bit of texture feel to it. And so the knife feels just fine in your hand and in the regular position. Also, along the same lines with that, there's no jimping up here on the top of the blade, but they did put laser etching on it that says original gunmetal, and some of them say, original black or whatever. And this does have a tiny bit of texturing, a noticeable bit of texturing in it, but I think jimping would have been better. It's not an absolute necessity on a knife this size because you're not going to be doing any super rugged cutting with it, but it might have been nice to just have something there to kind of keep your thumb in that position. And then secondly, balance point. So I always check the balance point on new knives. It's just something I do. I'm always curious how the manufacturers do that. And I generally prefer my balance point to be at or just slightly behind, just right there behind the pivot point of the knife. Now on this knife, the balance point is quite a ways back. It's actually here where the thumb recess is machined into the scale. So right about like that. And that's okay because the primary grip that you're going to have, unless you got super big hands, is going to be right there. So the knife feels really well balanced in this position. It feels perfect. It doesn't feel, you can't feel any blade weight or any handle weight. But if you move up to the flat right here and move your thumb up a little bit, then you can really, it's perceptible. You can notice that the knife feels a little bit back heavy, a little bit handle heavy. And that's not really a bad thing at all. It's not like the knife wants to do this, but certainly your balance point being here instead of up here lends the knife, when you're in a little bit more forward grip position, to having a little bit more noticeable balance to the rear, to the grip. Again, not anything major, not drastic, but it is perceptible when you're in that other hand position. And again, it's not a bad thing at all. It's just an observation that I make on every knife, and it's an FYI for anybody who's watching this video and is maybe a potential buyer of a Kizer Original. All right, so let's do a couple quick size comparisons for you to wrap up this video. Let's go ahead and get the board down here. And we will get the original here in the middle. So there you go, you can kind of see what that looks like. And the first knife I'm going to put on here for size comparison is the Benchmade Mini Grip Tillion. So here's the mini grip, pivot to pivot, with the Kizer Original. And you can see they're pretty similar, man. The length's almost identical. Now I will say the Grip Tillion has a more slender, rounded feel in your hand, and the Original has a little bit more chunky, squarish feel. There are no hot spots on the Original, but it definitely has a more squarish feel. Obviously, it's an aluminum knife with just some nice finishing around the edges of the scales. And the second knife I'm going to show you is going to be the Benchmade Mini Bugout, the standard one. So here's what the Bugout looks like, pivot to pivot, in relationship to the Original. So you can see the Bugout has a little bit more blade length and a little bit more scale length. Again, anybody who's handled the Bugout knows it's a thin blade stock, and it is a super, super thin handle. I mean, if you want a comparison, just take a look at that. So there's a big difference in the thickness of these two knives when you put them next to each other. So this feels a lot more positive in your hand because obviously it's got a lot more beef, a lot more width to the handle than the Bugout, which in its stock configuration is pretty thin, and I've always felt feels a little too light. But anyway, that gives you a good idea size-wise of what it looks like up against a couple of comparably sized knives. Overall, at around 80 bucks, Kizer's hit a home run with this knife. You can't even get this right now. I think there's some green ones left out there. They come in 3 colors. They come in black. They come in black with kind of a metallic olive green coating. And then they come in this one, which is the satin or nude blade with the gunmetal finish. It's a great little knife. It feels good in your hand. I think it's something different from Kizer, from some of the other knives they've had. It's a button lock, but man, this thing is super fidgety. In closing, I'd have to say I certainly can recommend this knife. I might buy another one of these in a different finish. It's great for EDC. It carries well in your pocket, good blade steel, good fit and finish, and you definitely would love to have this in your collection. That's all I got for today, folks. Once again, thank you to everybody for watching, for liking and subscribing. If you're not already subscribed, please consider hitting that like button and giving me a subscribe also. I hope you all have a great day and stay sharp, folks.